If you're walking up on a house and you can smell the air fresheners outside before you get there, there's probably a water problem in the home.
Once again, this be the realest shit you heard in your life.
So welcome to the Realest Show You Know. I'm your host, Kris Diaz, and today we have some great guests with us. We have Tahila Lizlandes from Hanna Realty in Goshen, New York. We have Christie Uble from the Oliveiro Team, Keller Williams First in New York. And we have Cheryl Lewis, also from Hanna Realty. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't we get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in real estate. We'll start with Tahila.
Yes. Well, I've been in real estate for a little over 3 years now. I got started after really looking at what I would like to do in terms of my career, the flexibility, as well as the impact. I like being able to work with people and seeing their journey throughout their business, their real estate goals. And when I dived into real estate, I really found my footing and really realized that it was the right fit for me to not only grow my career, but also help others reach their real estate goals.
Cool. Christy, tell us a little bit about how you got started.
All right. So it's been since 2011. So we're at 14 years now.
Awesome.
Okay.
But I actually got into it kind of on the flip side of things. I had a home improvement company. So I was going into houses and renovating them. And yes, I do the work myself, but
Nice.
so new tile flooring, hardwood flooring, fireplaces, painting, trim work, even kitchens and bathrooms. But the question that I always ask going into it to try and feel out their budget a little bit was, why are we doing this? And it was always because I want to sell my property.
Yeah.
I'd be crazy to not get in on this, right? Like I'm sitting here and I'm already advising these people to the best of my knowledge and I want to learn more. So I learned more. And then I was like, I'm going to get my real estate license. So that's where that came in.
Sounds like you should have started your own HGTV show.
So my husband and I work together.
Yeah.
We've done many projects together. And everybody's like, why do you guys not have a show? I'm like, because every other word is going to have to be bleeped. That is just how it's going to be. So,
Makes it entertaining.
It definitely is entertaining, very comedic at times. But yeah, it's, yes. So anybody who wants to pick me up.
Cool. And Cheryl, how did you get started?
Very DIY, my husband and I. My husband used to build houses, had his own company for years.
Oh.
Very DIY throughout our own home and families' homes. I was in retail. It was during COVID. And I was like, I cannot do this retail no more. I need to find a different way.
Yeah.
Got myself into real estate. And then I've been doing this for over 5 years. Still DIYing, still landscaping, still doing all of that. But
you sound like thousands of other people who decided, during COVID, real estate is definitely the industry that makes sense during this time.
It was. You can work from home. At times you can go in your office. It made more sense. Retail was crazy. People got crazy.
Yeah.
During COVID in the retail business.
So today's topic is buying versus renting. And when does it make sense to buy and when does it make sense to just rent? So with that being said, what do you usually recommend to first-time clients considering when deciding between buying and renting? And I'm just throwing this out to all three of you ladies. Feel free to jump in there.
I think it all pertains to the person themselves.
Okay.
For starters, they're long-term versus short-term residency, not even goals, but residency. Like if they're on the younger side and they don't know if they're going to stay here with family or if they're going to take a job across the country, whatever the case is, obviously, I think that would weigh a lot on the foundation of whether or not they're going to buy or rent.
So you would say it's probably depending on their time frame of whether they want to plant roots in a certain spot, and it doesn't have to be that long.
Correct. It doesn't have to be long. And again, like depending on, how future somebody is looking, they could live there for 2 years. And if they have a good job or if they wind up marrying or whatever, they can use that property as, part of their investment portfolio and rent that out, count that as income and buy to wherever they're moving. But those a lot of times, especially for first-time home buyers, it's just not what they're thinking. So if we're talking renting versus buying, 9 times out of 10, we're talking first-time home buyers that just aren't sure of the process. So, that's a big jump for them to think that long-term as far as an investment portfolio sometimes.
Definitely. So your first home doesn't have to be your forever home.
Correct.
Right. And I think it is both timeline as well as what they're willing to take on in terms of responsibility.
Yes.
I think that a lot of people decide to stick with renting for a little while because they're not necessarily willing to take on what it takes to maintain the home, as well as, whether it's inside the house, outside the house, deciding the bigger things like how do I pay my taxes, things like that. They are just a little bit more nervous about it. So for that reason, they delay it. They maybe say, we'll stick to renting for a little longer just because that's not my problem. But then you pay the other side of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's pros and cons to both. It really is.
I actually had a super cute client that was kind of in between and finally decided she was going to buy her house, but had no idea. She lost her husband, but she had no idea how to operate a lawnmower, and she had an 18-year-old son. And so I came over, I gave her my old lawnmower, and I was like, all right, this is how we do things. This is so. But that's it's a legit concern. But I don't know how to take care of my lawn.
Exactly,
little things like that.
Exactly.
So with that being said, what do you think are some of the common misconceptions about owning a home versus renting?
I think that a common misconception is probably that, it's not my responsibility to take care of the home, but it still is. Even if you're renting, you still have a certain degree of keeping the home in good standing, good shape.
Sure.
Because you could receive the repercussions on the other end, not just only, security deposit, but, potential long-term issues with the landlord. But I think another misconception is that it's more expensive to buy. Yes, it is in the sense of getting started, but I think the difference of paying your mortgage and versus paying your landlord's mortgage is something to consider. People, I think that they're paying their monthly rent and that's it. They don't have to worry about anything else, but your landlord is getting the opportunity of profiting off of you paying their mortgage. And now they could decide to leave one day, sell the house, and everything's out of your control. There's not security there. And I think, that's huge.
Yeah.
And what if that landlord decides to sell? Then you're back to square one and you got to start all over with your money's down again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It adds up.
So, Cheryl, what would you say is when you're renting, how much money does a renter have to come up with up front?
They have to come up with 3 times the rent in order to be considered. They have to make that a month in order to be considered for that property.
Okay.
That's what they're asking, which is a month security, a month rent, and then the broker.
Got it. So, that can be significant.
Yes,
you think
it is.
about it.
For sure.
Right? So, just using crazy made up numbers here, right? So let's say the rent is $3,000, right? Let's say you're paying, and I know it's different across the country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But let's say in this market it's $3,000. That's $9,000.
$9,000 to put down.
And
That's
then,
before rent insurance, utility costs, moving costs.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
well,
There's
just
a lot.
your initial upfront costs, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But so that's $9,000. If you're buying a $300,000 house, you're a first-time home buyer, 3% down, it's $9,000.
Yes.
And of course, it's not factoring your closing costs, right? But it's you're almost there.
But a lot of renters don't realize that there are ways to still cover those closing costs
Yes.
in your offer, right?
For sure.
So, which is a totally different topic, of course. But if an agent were to educate the person, and I actually we talked about this in our meeting this morning. I have somebody who's been looking to rent, not in a rush, but his budget is high. And I'm like, he's coming up with this 3 months and he has great credit because we all know they have to fill out their credit app. They have to make decent money in order to get in the door. $2,500 was his budget. And here we are. I just got his pre-approval on Monday. So he's like, you know what? That makes sense. And now with the multifamilies too, you can now you have both options. So yeah, you can be almost a tenant in your own house, but have somebody else paying your mortgage. So, I mean, there's just so many options out there for the long term, somebody trying to build their investment portfolio, I guess.
Yeah.
So expanding on that, what do you think might be some factors that might tip a renter toward renting versus buying and vice versa?
I think like what you said in the beginning, their timeline. Some people, just want to rent because they don't necessarily want to have a house long term just yet. They're not ready for that responsibility. Some people, they don't want the responsibility of maintaining the home inside or out. They don't want to worry about big costs, like if the AC goes out or if, something breaks. So they kind of pay for the convenience. And that's why they maybe will go towards renting, but don't realize the con of it is, your landlord could kick you out one day, or your landlord could raise the price of your rent. We're seeing that today tremendously. The rent prices are increasing. So let's say that, your rent does end this month. Next month, you have to come up with that 3 times all over again, in addition to the fact that the rent price may have increased. So it's a lot. It adds up.
I also find, though, too, a lot of renters, if they're going to rent versus the buying, it's trying out an area before they decide to buy.
That's a good point.
Yes.
That's a good point.
If you come in and you're not sure of an area and you can get a lease that's 6 months, so you can try out the area, I would say go for it.
So
before you commit to a home.
And especially
test driving the neighborhood.
Test driving a neighborhood, yes.
And especially if it's a limited budget, right?
Yes.
So like in our area, we know if it's like 300 or lower, which is a lot of the renters these days, that's kind of the ballpark. That's definitely going to put them in certain areas, and they may not be as familiar with those. So sometimes there is a little stepping stone in there that has to happen.
And it gives them the opportunity to build their savings, build their credit, the essential things to make buying when they are ready a little bit more easier.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up credit. How does credit, and we had a brief conversation before we started the show about credit, but how does credit affect the decision process in buying and renting?
It affects both, which is obviously
okay.
Obviously when it comes to renting, there are rental requirements. The landlord could require a minimum credit score for the application to even be considered. On the buying side, it affects your interest rate, your buying power in general, in terms of how much you're pre-approved for, in addition to your debt to asset ratio. Like all of that in combination really affects what you can do, let alone if you can do it at all. So,
and I find some rentals, and I understand landlords wanting to protect their investments, but sometimes I just read the agent remarks, and it's, you got the 3 months up front, must make 3 times the rental fee, and, credit score above 750. And I'm like, if I had all of those things, I'd be buying a house.
Yes.
So here we are back to why do people choose to do one thing over the other?
So, it's funny because that was our earlier conversation. My misconception was always folks rented because their credit just wasn't up there to buy. But I see, talking to you ladies, it seems like landlords right now are asking for credit scores, 680 and above.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, for that, that if their credit was up there and they had all these assets and their income was sufficient, to pay your mortgage, why wouldn't they buy?
Exactly. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're renting, these rentals have a minimum credit score requirement versus if they're buying, maybe they have a little bit more wiggle room with the credit score that they have just based on the programs they can go into.
Oh, sure. You can buy whatever, 640, 620 credit score you could buy, but you can't rent.
Right.
It's crazy.
And I've had, credit scores in the 600s that have gotten denied. Even though there wasn't necessarily a requirement, it just, I don't know how I feel about it. Because if you do the in-depth dive, like, okay, well, there's this expense, this is open, and then it just kind of snowballs from there. But they could turn around and go and get a mortgage at the same time.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's crazy.
How do long-term costs affect the decision? And when I talk about long-term costs, I'm talking about like maintenance, because we discussed maintenance, right? When you're a homeowner, yes, there's always going to be maintenance. Your roof isn't going to last forever. Unless you bought a house with a new roof, you're eventually going to have to replace the roof. You're eventually going to have to fix this and that. And then there's taxes and stuff like that. Do you think that factors into the decision, Cheryl?
I do think it does. I work with many people because I do specialize in rentals. I work with many people that the family itself is no longer a unit. They have separated.
Okay.
And we're on a mom with children or a dad that has visiting.
Yes.
And they have to accommodate for the family not being together. So a one income on these high rents needing 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
They can't afford taxes.
Okay.
They can't afford a new roof.
Yeah.
New appliances. They can't fix a leaky pipe down in the basement because they're just able to pay for their rent. So that becomes a big factor.
Okay. So that might steer someone to deciding to rent
to go
versus
with a rent.
buy.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the responsibilities in a certain degree cap.
Yes.
It makes sense.
And I see a very high thing since COVID where families are not together anymore. It's a very high percentage.
So in past episodes, I've discussed, or I should say the guest, everyone has discussed how home equity builds wealth, and it's a great source of wealth generation, for those who are looking for their slice of the American dream, right? The American pie. Can you discuss a little bit more of like on that topic, like home ownership? Or, I see it as being a pro of buying versus renting.
100%, because there's the beauty of living in a home. You have a roof over your head, and the amount you're paying every single month is not only paying for that roof over your head, but also paying towards your investment to grow and build. Yeah. That's a huge factor to consider when it comes to buying versus renting, because when you do pay that monthly rent, it's not going anywhere for your personal benefit. It really isn't. You're not growing. Exactly. So when you do own a home, we see from year to year how rent prices have increased, so has property values. So while you're paying that same monthly payment, you could be at least growing your money versus throwing it away.
So it is an investment.
100%.
It is an investment. You're investing in yourself.
Your future.
And yes, there are going to be expenses like maintenance costs and taxes. Tax. It's funny because when I discuss with buyers all the time, what's my monthly payment? I'm like, okay, this is your monthly payment. That includes principal and interest, which won't change through the life of the loan as long as it's a fixed rate loan. But your taxes, insurance, it's not locked in.
Right.
Taxes don't go down, right? I've never seen taxes really go down or be reduced in a municipality. They typically go up. But with that being said, it's just like your maintenance costs, right? Like, hey, you are going to have to keep your house in good repair.
But if you do that, if you keep maintaining it and you also put in renovations that add value to the home, there goes that increase of equity once again. It gives you opportunity. And like we said before, it doesn't necessarily have to be your forever home. It could be a home that you stay in for several years. And then that equity you build can bring you to buy in the next realm, you're looking forward to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you could tap into the equity in your home and you can do renovations that makes sense. Right?
Exactly.
And I'm not a financial advisor, right? So I'm not giving financial advice. But, sometimes I've seen folks who tap into the equity in their home, take out a home equity loan or a line of credit, and they use those funds for, I'm going to go on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use those funds for, whatever it is. And they're not necessarily getting a good return on their investment by doing so. I'm not judging because, maybe those memories, those lifelong memories you've built, maybe that is your return on your investment.
Right.
However, but if you use those funds to do renovations to your home and increase the value of your home, to me, they make sense. And it's never going to be, it's not always going to be one-to-one, right? So like I tapped into the equity in my home and I put in a pool, right?
Yeah.
And I've done some renovations and I know it's not necessarily going to add, tremendous value to the home. But you know what?
It adds to your life.
Hey,
Yes.
We staycation now,
Yeah.
right? So it's like my wife's like, where are we going for vacation this year? I'm like,
the pool.
there it is.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Nice and blue. Yeah. Yep.
Cool. So, in our current market, are there any specific municipalities, cities, or areas you think where it makes more sense to rent than buy? And I'll preface this by saying, for the most part, we're working, we're based in New York. We're in the Hudson Valley area, lower to mid Hudson Valley area, right? So is there any areas where you think, hey, it makes sense to rent versus buy?
So also, I want everybody to know that we are in the lower Hudson Valley, but our MLS does cover New York City. So we do get a lot of people that come up from there.
I get a lot of people.
Which is also something to point out because there are rent-controlled buildings there. So
That's
so that kind of plays into the question as well that I think everybody should be aware of.
For sure.
Okay. So in certain situations, yes. And we know real estate prices to buy in New York City or the closer you are to New York City are astronomical, right?
But
as is the rent, but
right.
When
but
you
as
compare
far
apples
as here, like the bigger the city area is, like, the Middletowns and the Newburghs, they're going to have slightly lower. And then as you go into the outskirts, they're just going to increase based on
it's
wants and needs.
Yeah. On that point too, talking about taxes, I've also find that obviously your larger cities, your larger municipalities, they have a tax base. They're more businesses and corporations that will help support the tax base. So usually your homeowner is going to pay less in real estate taxes than they would in, your quiet, sleepy town or a really nice town that's just has small mom and pop shops, that help offset the tax base. So your taxes are going to be a little higher. And obviously the services you receive in the, the towns you receive are going to have higher taxes. So maybe in those cases, maybe renting versus buying might make sense. Okay. And talking more about lifestyle, and I know, Christie, you mentioned it earlier as well. The flexibility of maybe travel and a person's lifestyle. When would, how does that factor into renting versus buying?
If there's someone that's really never home, you still got to pay rent regardless if you're there or not.
True.
If you found places that rent short term, you could travel and do the short terms.
But with that being said, you're also going to be paying mortgage.
Yes, you are.
Well.
You're going to be paying that every time you go to somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think that's important to think about because if you're not there, who's making sure your home is okay? That nothing is breaking or leaking while you're away. So I think that's also maybe the difference of why somebody may rent versus buy because there's a super that will, go into the house versus it's just me. You know?
So I have friends that actually do a lot of travel, whether it be for work or personal. And because of their lifestyle, they own and they Airbnb
Yes.
while they're gone.
Yep.
So it's like the best of all worlds.
Yeah. That's really cool.
I think property type also plays into it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You know, I was recently talking to clients who they're travel nurses and they are based in Michigan. They own a house in Michigan, but they've been working in New York City for the last 3 years. They love the hospital they're working in. They love the area. And they're constantly find themselves flying back and forth between Michigan and New York. And they're like, but we love New York. We love our job. We want to buy because we're just tired of paying rent. Right. You know, and they do get a stipend, you know, from their company for housing and, you know, meals and stuff like that. But they're like, we love houses. We love, you know, we want a big house. And I'm thinking, well, you know, in your situation, it might make sense to buy a condo or a co-op.
Right.
Because if you are spending time away from your house, like the grass still needs to be cut.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
You still have maintenance. But if you have a condo or a co-op where your HOA fees are, you know, covering a lot of your maintenance, then that might make sense for you.
And that's not even just in this city, right? I mean, that's just anywhere up
That's
here, too.
anywhere.
Yeah, or
Right?
I was
So,
talking
like,
Westchester
okay,
County.
but I'm saying even here that totally picks up on another point. That's anywhere, you know, those people that want to rent because they don't want those responsibilities. Something with an HOA, yes, it increases your fees, but it's also an opportunity because most, depending on what it is, includes roofing. If it's like a condo,
Exactly.
exterior maintenance, things like that. And there's like a little compromise in there. You still, you know, have to be concerned about the inside workings of your unit, but
And not all landlords maintain the outside.
that is very true.
It's in the
Very
notes. You need to
true.
read it over very well.
Yeah, for those folks who are renting houses.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Sometimes you are the lawnmower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And
and
you
people-
are the shoveling person in the winter.
In the
Yes.
snow.
Yeah. I mean, so my son has listened to my husband and I all these years, right? And at 19, he didn't go to college. At 19, he bought his own place. So he has an investment property, and we have been very fortunate to have somebody who's like, oh, I bought a lawnmower. I'm going to take care of the lawn. Like, don't worry about it. So he's just been mowing the lawn for us. So, you know, we were prepared to hire somebody to do those things, but every now and then you get like a really good tenant who enjoys and appreciates your property that they're staying in. They want to benefit from it. And like, I don't mind mowing the lawn. We're going to mow the lawn. I was like,
Wow.
sweet.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So I guess on that note, then maintenance. Yes, there might be an advantage to renting versus owning in terms of maintenance. But that can be offset because we just discussed two different scenarios where you can buy, let's say, a condo or a co-op and still have your investment. But you're paying HOA fees, but or even if it's a single family house and you hire a landscaper, you hire a house cleaner or a housekeeper, I'm sorry, or whomever, that can, you know, make maintenance a lot easier for you.
Yeah.
So,
It's all about convenience and like what works for you, what you rather pay for or do yourself.
I see too, going into everything changing up with rentals, a lot of landlords are no longer accepting pets.
Yeah.
And your pet is part of your family. So if your family member needs to come with you, you are better off buying.
Very limited.
You're better off. You're very
that is an
limited in a
excellent
rental.
point. You know,
You're very limited.
Yeah, I guess that does come into play when discussing lifestyle.
Yes.
For sure.
Mhm.
For
Yeah.
sure. Especially
I
if you have
mean,
multiple pets, the sizes.
They're
the
family members. They're not just a pet.
Yes.
It's a family member.
My dog.
Yeah.
My dog is awesome.
Yes.
He's the only one who's happy to see me when I come home.
Yeah.
Kids will be like, that's dad, whatever.
And-
My dog is the only one who runs to me. I rub his
Yeah.
belly and he shows me love. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's unconditional.
And
love.
even a
Yeah.
sidestep from that. So I do a lot of fostering for a local agency, and in our process, even though the rental that the family might be in now accepts pets, we take that into consideration because how long are they going to be at that rental? You know, animals last for many years, and we don't want 2 years down the road, they can no longer stay in that rental. They have to find somewhere else. And now all of a sudden we're in that situation where these animals need to find yet another new home.
Yeah.
So it works on other ends too, right? With
I never thought about that.
families
and it doesn't mean because you call it a emotional support.
Yes.
Pet, animal.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever it may be, a landlord does not matter to a landlord.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And you know, there are rules to follow.
Yes.
And
But there's ways around it.
You know, but there are ways around it. There are ways with the emotional support that have to be followed. You can't just get a certificate and say, I have emotional support. Correct. There are guidelines to that.
Service dogs are different.
Yes. And this emotional support has to be done through a therapist. There's many things to it. So even when you are looking to rent, the emotional support, yes, they're supposed to accept it, but there are things that they have to accept and things that they don't.
And that's I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yes.
Because we're going to kind of circle back on rental laws and how it affects your business as a real estate agent and renters and landlords and whatnot. But have you guys seen any cases where somebody bought versus rented or rented versus bought a home and they regretted the decision? And what was that key factor?
I've never experienced somebody buying and wishing that they rented, but I have experienced somebody renting and I believe based on their situation wish that they bought. I sold a multifamily property that did have tenants inside. These tenants lived there for over a decade. There were two. And they actually were paying well below market price for their rent because they had a landlord for so long. Their landlord obviously decided to sell. And now in the process of them selling their home, the new landlords were going to double their rent price. So now they were in a situation where they, for so long, were paying below market rent, were comfortable with that, now are shaken up with the reality that they have to come up with 2 times it, or else they have to move to another place that is going to be way higher and they have to come up with the 3 times. So they were now in the instance in realizing how little control and security they actually did have in their home, even if they lived there for 10 years, that they have seen 3 landlords go through and there's not an end in sight per se. A new landlord could come. So they were really shaking up with the reality of how much long-term renting can actually have negative side effects. And you don't realize what's going on in the market outside of you as a result. So, you know, that was a big life shock for them for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
I had the flip. I had somebody who bought that in the end regretted buying. So, but it was a relocation. So it is a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
But was sold the house up here, went down to Florida. This is where I want to be. I want to be. I want to be. I want to be. And after 5 months, I got the call, I need to come back. And, you know, and now I was trying to, in a scramble, sell the house down there because the market down there right now is vastly different than ours. So, yeah, it was like just, it was the I wish I didn't make that impulse decision. So
yeah, I guess that was actually going to be my next question. Folks who might have bought and then decided, hey, this wasn't the right buy for me. They decided to rent out the home. But then, you know, it can also turn out to be a good investment, right? Because now you go from home buyer or, you know, where this is your primary home to now investor. And, you know, you use that as an investment property. And, you know, you decide to buy elsewhere or you decide even to rent elsewhere, you know. Cool. What are some of the most common mistakes you see renters or buyers making when making, other than the one you just described?
I see renters when they go in, It's a cosmetic. Ooh, this is really nice. And again, it's cosmetic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not internally, the place might not be what you think it is. Where I've had renters be like, call me 2 weeks later and go, this is wrong. And I'm like, because it was cosmetic.
Yeah.
And that was,
And you've already shelled out 3x rent, right? So
yes.
Yeah. So it's funny because when you buy a home, I mean, it's a major financial transaction, right? So you're going to get a home inspector.
There are a lot of red flags when you're going to rent.
Yeah.
There are warnings.
So what are some of those?
If you're walking up on a house and you can smell the air fresheners outside before you get there, there's probably a water problem in the home.
Try to hold that musty, mildew, moldy.
If there's about 7 of those little plug-in things in a house, right when you walk in the door and you can smell it before you get there, there's probably a water problem or some type of mold in that house.
Yeah, or folks who paint over the mold.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of that. If there's a lot of faux wall pieces glued to the wall, probably because maybe there was an issue behind it. Even when you're going in to rent, you should be going in thinking you're buying, not renting. Not it's someone else's problem. You need to live there.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you go in, you still should look for up at the ceiling and look for water damage.
So
you still should be turning on faucets. You should still be trying to make the oven,
sink,
looking under the sink, making sure that there's all these things because you're the one that's got to live there and you signed a contract saying I accept it the way it is.
But also like you're buying, right? I also look at the rental history on the market too, like you do when you're looking at a house's history.
I look to see how many times it's
price
been rented.
drops or price increases, things like that. You know why? Yeah.
So this might be a legal question, and I apologize if maybe you guys aren't the ones to answer. But someone who did commit to signing a lease, and it turns out to be a disaster, not working for them. Do they have much recourse in getting out of it?
Whatever you do, if you're not going to pay your rent, do not spend it. Keep it in the bank.
Okay.
Do not spend that rent. Because if it winds up in court and you've spent that money, right away you're wrong.
Oh.
If you are a tenant. And there are lawyers you can talk to with rentals. There are.
And it really depends on the landlord too.
It does.
So
I mean,
I had a rental listing, and a different agent brought in the tenant, and there was a language barrier. He didn't understand that he wasn't supposed to be smoking in the unit. There was a couple of things that happened, and this was like part of a residence where the landlord lived upstairs. So it just wasn't working out, and they were able to communicate it very well that it just wasn't right. She offered to let him out because it wasn't beneficial for anybody, right? So, I mean, there are ways if it can be communicated sometimes, but otherwise it could be messy.
It can get very messy.
I know myself as a former landlord. I had a tenant who just wasn't happy with the place.
Right.
I would have no problem letting them out of a lease.
Yeah.
Because I want a good tenant like every other landlord.
Landlords need to realize also by a higher rent does not give you a better tenant.
Yeah.
A higher credit does not give you a better tenant.
Yeah.
And that's when they're setting these standards right now. I mean, in the last 5 years, rents have gone crazy.
And a pet-free tenant isn't always better.
And there's so many things that when I'm reading these rentals, because I work with renters consistently. I work with Section 8. I work with different housing vouchers. Everything, there are so many rules. There's so many rules in renting. There's so many things and hoops you got to go through to get a tenant a rental. It's hard.
So this might seem like an obvious answer, but how should someone prepare financially if they're leaning toward buying versus rent?
Well, obviously the biggest one would be saving.
Power save.
Yeah. The power
Power
of saving
save.
is huge. I would say,
Yeah.
really stack as much as possible. And in addition to that, pay
Mhm.
off balances,
Yeah.
really reduce any credit card debt that you have,
Okay.
build that credit up so that you have the buying power that you really want or the renting power, whichever way, so that it's
Yeah.
not really hurting you rather than helping you.
Mm.
And I also think that talking to a lender and
Mhm.
just when you're thinking about it, even if you're not in
Yeah.
a position to do it, because you can guide better as to what you should be doing
Yes.
with those credit cards. Because a lot of people think closing out or canceling those
Oh,
cards is the way
right.
to do it.
Mhm.
And that is not the case.
No, it's
So,
not.
just a little education there as well, leading into it, let's talk to a lender. Let's see where I need my credit at. And some don't even know what their credit is. Some don't even
Right.
know that they could do it in like 2 months. Who
Yeah.
knows,
With the current market in the New York City, Hudson Valley area right now, where do you see it in the next 5 years? Do you see renting becoming more common,
Mhm.
or will home ownership be the goal for most people?
It's funny. I looked at that question and did not like it at all.
I
I'll be
know.
honest. I
I
was
did
like,
too.
I don't know that I
There's a
like.
crystal ball. You mean you don't have a crystal ball?
Well, it's not even the crystal ball because I think I don't know. I think it's just going to still be the same. You're going to have
I
some that
agree.
want one, some that want another. You're going to have
Yeah.
different generations that, are going to be leaving and some that want to have rentals so that way they could still come visit their family, but they want to be snowbirds.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that I think are still going to be around that's going to still be the same.
Well, let me ask you, in terms of the rental market,
Yeah.
do you think landlords are going to be, we know, and we've been in a housing crunch for a very long time,
Right.
not just locally, but nationally.
Mhm.
Right.
We know housing costs are becoming so much more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see where landlords might become a little less stringent or more stringent?
I think that landlords are going to pull back in terms of how strict they're being because they have to. The market's going to force them to.
Mhm.
I think we're already kind of seeing that in the sense of although rent prices are high, they're sitting on the market for longer. It's taking a little while longer for it to get rented out. To circle back to your previous question of what I think it will be more common of, I honestly think it'll be 50-50. I don't see it one being more common than the other because like we keep on saying, it goes down to lifestyle, it goes down to needs, but big of all, it goes down to accessibility. And right now we are still, even though we're shifting towards a buyer's market, we are still very much low in inventory. There's not enough affordable homes. There's not enough even affordable rentals. So I do think that people that are able to buy will. The goal of home ownership will not be going away, but simply because there's not enough opportunity, we'll still see plenty of renters.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do you ladies agree?
there's still going to be plenty of investors out there that are going to be buying houses and either flipping them for, first-time home buyers maybe, or holding on to them. And we're still going to have those rentals out there and people are going to want them.
Yeah.
What I see is that anybody that went into those bidding wars during COVID that were coming from different places and overbid on a house that they can't get out of right now, I see them making them maybe, if they were single family homes, making them into a multifamily. So they have
interesting.
that income. And I see it a lot.
Legal multi?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on it also depends on the town.
So you mean
Okay.
It also
renovating the
depends on the
home?
town.
Renovating the home.
Renovating the home to accommodate another family so those two families can pay that mortgage.
Right.
Interesting.
Because they overbid when they were buying.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking long term.
Yep.
They were thinking, I need that house now.
Yeah.
I need to get out of where this COVID is. And they're upside down.
Yeah, I've had a few listing appointments that were like that. I just, they.
And it depends on where you live
Mhm.
of what is considered legal rental and what isn't. There's some places that do inspections on rentals. There's some that don't.
Mhm.
It all depends.
As a former landlord myself, I can't see a landlord becoming less stringent because I think a
agree.
lot of investors got hit pretty hard during
Mhm.
COVID.
They did.
Mhm.
And, we know New York laws are a little more friendly toward the renter
Correct.
as opposed to the landlord. I just can't see landlords becoming a little less stringent.
I guess it depends on what area you're
It
talking.
depends on the
Okay.
area.
In terms of
Yeah.
are they going to be, less restrictive on terms of the applicant's like financial ability or, previous experience? No, but I do think stringent in the sense of they're not going to get the highest rent price they ever could because of the fact that the market doesn't
Their rents are going to
recognize
have
it.
to come down.
Yes.
I was,
They're going to have to. If you want a tenant, you're going to have to be reasonable.
Yeah.
As
of
well as be
course.
creative.
Yes.
Like I work with landlords right now that their creative option was to cover the broker fee because we were really seeing so many people not be able to do the 3 times. So now
That's a
if they're
big
able to
thing
do
for
2
me.
times, that's making it a lot more accessible to people. So if it's covering the broker fee, maybe it's, giving them wiggle room on 2.5 months worth of rent you could afford every single month versus a full 3 months. So I think there's always got to be a workaround just to make it work for everyone.
And there's nothing wrong with asking when you're applying. If you're on the buyer side of like a tenant side, there's nothing wrong with asking, hey, will the landlord pay that half of the broker fee while my tenant pays this half of the broker fee?
Yeah.
Because you got to meet in the middle.
Somewhere.
Some of these tenants cannot afford 3 months of rent. They just can't.
Yeah.
The next question, I will try not to laugh too hard at asking it. But I know it's a question that comes up a lot from tenants. Rent to own. Does such a thing exist really
It does.
in New York?
It does.
Do you see it?
I've had it a couple of times.
So I guess I can imagine it if, the owner owns the property free and clear, right? And they're like, sure, we'll hold the note for you.
Is that a rent to own though? That's a hold
No,
the
that's
note,
not a
so-
rent to own.
Because I did a hold the note. So I actually liked that question.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of the same as leasing a car versus buying a car.
Mhm.
So you always have the option at the end of the lease to buy your car. You're paying a zillion more for it than you would have if you just bought it right out of the gate. But I don't know. So holding the note is different than rent to buy.
Correct.
So I went through a divorce in 2012 and my credit was shocked. So we had to do a short sale on the property and I couldn't buy a house. And here I am looking with 2 young kids, and the rents were ridiculous in Goshen. So I was looking at $1,800 minimum, and I can buy a house for this. Like I just owned a house. I know that I have the finances to do it. I even have, the money to put down on it. So I wound up as a realtor and I went through and I was like, who has a property where that will hold the note for me? And that's how I bought my current house, was through a hold the note. And it was the most fantastic option ever.
That's a different, and you're correct. It is different to where the seller will, hold the note.
Yep. I mean, it's a
on it.
liability for them, but when you put it into legal paperwork, you're still, the deed
Covered.
gets transferred to
Yep.
you. You're paying them as the bank. You still get to do the tax amortization, like all of that.
Yeah. No. You're right. I apologize. But the rent to own, I mean, I'm thinking of it as an investor. I hold this property, I own this property, and it's going to generate revenue for me. But you do see it.
If they've had a tenant in there a long time and they kind of want out, but they don't want to displace the tenant,
Yeah.
they'll kind of go to them and say, would you be interested in? I've had it happen twice.
Like a first right of refusal.
It's before they would put it up for sale or anything else.
Okay, so that's
would you want to
different.
do a rent to own?
Okay.
I've had clients come to me looking for rent to owns, which are very hard to find. They're very hard to find.
Yeah.
And you're better off going and talking to someone financial and seeing if you could buy your own home.
Yeah.
What you're going to pay for a rental in order to get in and every month you might as well try to buy a home.
Yeah.
Were you going to ask the second part of that question?
No. Go ahead.
No, because I liked the co-buying aspect of it.
That actually, yes.
I think that when it comes to rent to own, I don't see that being as common. Co-buying, on the other hand, I 100% seeing that becoming more popular in instances of friends buying, of course, but also multi-generational living. I think that's higher than it is now than it ever has been. And I only seeing it getting bigger. I work with clients now where they are either buying a house with the expectation of their, their children or other family members, whether it's even their parents, to move in, or they are, thinking of it long-term down the end of the line. Like, can this work for my entire family? So obviously that's different than buying it together. But I do think that there are people that will at least consider that as an option now. Mother, daughter, in-laws, houses,
In-law suite,
in-law suites.
That's
There's
what I had an
Agreed.
in-law suite 20 years ago. In my house. We just disassembled it just recently.
Really? And now they can come together in finances rather than two individual families trying to find homes. Now they have the opportunity to come together and find something better.
And we've discussed that in past episodes. Yeah, co-buying and multi-generational families.
Yeah.
Where you might have a grandparent who might be living with
Exactly.
mom and dad, and maybe they can't. Mom and dad can't. Mom and dad can't afford to purchase the home alone, and they got to bring in grandma, and grandma's going to live with them, and she's getting Social Security or grandpa, and they're getting a pension or whatever it is, and they can assist.
Yeah, exactly.
My son just built a house with the whole apartment downstairs. Yeah. Yes.
You get ready to move in?
Right.
No. He's in Virginia. He's in
okay.
Virginia. And he actually, I call it the Airbnb vacation because when I go there, the accommodations are 5-star.
Nice.
Yes. My daughter-in-law is very good with 5-star accommodations.
Right.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you, ladies, for appearing. I think you gave a lot of great information for the audience. If you can share with us how you can be reached, if somebody in the audience might be looking to buy or rent, and how they can reach you and how they can follow you on social media. We'll start with you, Tahila.
Well, yes. If you're looking to buy, sell, rent, or invest, you can reach out to me. My name is Tahila Lizlandes. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, as tahila.decor. So reach out at any time or by email. Each one of them will have a link in my bio to contact me.
Great. Thanks.
So efficient.
And Cheryl?
And I also have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Okay.
Yes. You can follow me on any of them. Cheryl Lewis Realtor is for the Facebook. Cheryl Lewis Diva Realtor for my Instagram. And YouTube is Cheryl Lewis Realtor also.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
A little spice in
And
there.
Christie?
Yeah,
A little spice. Yes, Facebook and Instagram. Christie Uble is like the personal page, but it's closing deals with Christie for both of those.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yes, which is now an LLC.
Whoa.
Good
Moving
for
up
you.
in the world.
Yep.
Love
Nice,
it. Love
nice.
it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it,
was fun.
Chris.
Thank
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Once again, this be the realest shit you heard in your life.